All right, so here we go. We're going to wrap up this morning the life of Abraham. And last week I thought maybe we'd make it all the way through, and we didn't quite. But what's funny, as I was looking at it later, we actually answered all the questions. So this week on your sheet, you'll notice they're all filled in. The reason is everything that's been filled in is what we covered last week. We are going to go back through a little bit, kind of a review. You'll see each of those. But the story, the main story that we'll look at this morning, we started into last week. We're just going to go back through that story again and then kind of wrap out what we didn't get to last time. So instead of reading through all these, there's like, I don't remember, 20-something screens of scripture. This is a ton this morning. So which is why we didn't get all the way through it last time. I just kind of highlighted a couple things as we kind of worked through these first few. This is where we learned that Sarah had lived 127 years and then she passed away. She gave birth to Isaac at age 90, which means he's 37 when she passes. We will later find out when he gets married. Look for that. And that'll help you see, okay, what's the time frame of this maybe travel to go get the wife. We don't know exactly how far after the death that Abraham sends his servant. We talked about that last week, him sending the servant. But we'll get an answer to she dies when Isaac is 37, and then later this morning you'll see when he gets married. So it just kind of helps give us a time frame there. I just wanted you to be aware of that. Second thing on here, the sojourner and a foreigner, and we talked about what does it mean to be a sojourner. There's obvious things like he's saying he's a stranger in a foreign place, but we went to Hebrews 11 and pulled some of these quotes, and it is, he was looking forward to a city that has foundations whose designer and builder is God. We're not told that in Genesis, we're told that about Abraham in Hebrews chapter 11. Also in Hebrews 11, we're told he was seeking a homeland. He desired a better country, that is, a heavenly one. So therefore, he always dwelled in tents and never owned the place in which he lived. It was symbolic of how we are to live. So that's why it ends there as should we. We are Americans. We own our homes, or the bank does, and we're paying, or we're renting, whichever. The point is, we're not nomads the way Abraham was. So my point is, I think this is harder for us to have the mindset of we're sojourners, we're foreigners. That's true if we're a Christian. It's harder for us to do that, to think that way, because of we're so entrenched into our current culture. So I just think that's something for us to think about, have, kind of keep those things in mind, as that's our call, is to live that way. He then goes and buys this land. I'm not going to read through this screen. This is describing that. In the next set is where it says, and Abraham listened to Ephraim, and Abraham weighed out for Ephraim the silver that he had named in the hearing of the Hittites, 400 shekels of silver according to the weight current among the merchants. So he does buy this land. It's the only piece of land he owns in all of the land of Canaan, and it's for a burial place. And so we talked about why would that be so important that he would do that. And so it describes that there, and then he buried her there. So I wanted to just kind of talk about that briefly and then give you the answer to this question. Why is it important that he pay for the land? This purchase is an important part of him honoring Sarah. I think that is part of this. It's a big deal. What we do when a loved one passes away speaks to how much we care. I'm not putting dollar amount, the more you spend, the more you care. That's completely wrong. What I'm referring to is, I just hear that all the time. Put me in the backyard, and I guess I deal with life insurance, and people are always making death jokes because of what I do. And anyway, that's not honoring of the body. That's not honoring of the person, right? We all get that. That's why it's sort of funny, because we're poking fun at the thing that kind of freaks us out. But the point is here, I think there is an important piece to this. Really is an honoring of Sarah, him taking the time and going and actually buying land. It's the only land he ever owns, and it's for the purpose of burying his wife. Don't lose sight, I think, of this is important to him on that front. Now, is that the only reason he does it? No. While he will never own the place where he lives, he and his descendants will live in the land in years to come, and he wants there to be a place where he and his wife can be buried in that land. That's another huge part. He's not buying just her burial place, he's buying his burial place. This is where his ancestors are going to someday possess the land. He wants to be there in that land. He doesn't want to be taken off somewhere else. Here's the other thing. If you own the land, then they can't come in and say, hey, get your, you guys are squatters, get the bones out of here. No, we own this. You can't dispossess us of this piece of the land. So that's what I'm talking about here at the very end, is also a way of providing protection for their remains. If they don't own that piece of ground, in the future, someone could come in and the Hittites could come in and say, hey, get your stuff and get out of here. We don't want your dead here anymore. So that was part of that as well. And I'm getting a very distressed look here on your face. So you have a question?
I don't even know how to ask this question.
Okay, sorry to put you on the spot.
No, that's all right. I don't know how to ask the question, but it's interesting to me that when you look at the picture, like God divided up Canaan.
Yes.
He said, this is yours, this is yours, this is yours. And
you're talking about the 12 tribes, you mean?
Yeah, and they all went off and lived in what God gave them. And yet you see other parts of the Bible where Abraham and David went and actually paid for something so it was theirs.
Yeah.
So that's what's kind of confusing to me. This, God gave us, so this is ours because we chased everybody else out. But we have to go buy something, so it's really ours?
Well, he's going to give them the land in the future. He hasn't given Abraham this land right now. His descendants will be given the land. So he needs a placeholder for his bones to be until they come and take possession of the land. Because right now it does belong to the Hittites and the whoever's and the...
Do we know who got this part?
No. I mean, we could figure that out. It'd be easy to figure out. I just didn't look at it. I'll come here in just a second. David, we looked at that last week. He bought a piece of land from another Jew, Israelite, because he, in his comment, I don't remember if I really touched on this. I showed that and I said it's because he's not going to make an offering of something that doesn't cost him something. You know, if I want to make a sacrifice and I use your livestock to do it, you made the sacrifice, not me, right? So it has to cost me something or it isn't my sacrifice. So that's why David did that. He's the king. He can just take anything he wants, but that sort of defeats the point. He's trying to establish, this is costing me something. And that's why I'm saying, this is costing Abraham something. Why? For the same reason. It's this honoring thing. I loved her so much. I need to have an expense involved in the mourning process.
So Abraham owned it, and then everything happened in the process, and then one of his descendants was given that.
Yeah.
So the ownership of that property was just passed down to whoever.
Yeah. Well, for 400 years. I'm assuming somebody else was using that field or whatever because his descendants weren't in the land for 400 years. That's a long time. But it was known in that area that this was owned by Abraham. So I don't think they would have moved the bodies out of the way. Let me go here and then over here. Go ahead. We're not going to finish it.
The Hittites were in this land
at
that time. And
right.
Abraham, bought it from the Hittites, and the Hittites remained in that land.
Right.
You know, for
so they would have known, yeah.
Right, and he was a great prince and was very famous, and so his name would have remained as the great prince, the great Bedouin prince. So there would have been legends, there would have been, his fame would have kept him, in the mind. David, the land he bought was actually where the temple was built, and that was in the tribe of Judah. And so that remains, I mean.
It was his tribe, he was just
Yes.
simply buying it from
Exactly.
another member of the tribe of Judah.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, okay. Let me come over here first, go ahead, Ray.
One thing we have to keep in mind, who owned the land? God owns the
Yeah.
land.
Yep,
God owned everything.
sure,
He created everything, so he has the right then, and the Hittites and the other Canaanites were removed from the land because of their sin.
mm-hmm,
And God had the right to do that,
Yeah.
to give this land then. They did not have to buy the land, God gave it to them. To a certain
Yeah.
extent, many of them did pay, because they paid with their lives as they
Right.
were attacking,
Yeah.
taking the land. That was God's purpose.
yeah,
And God can give the land to whomever he chooses to.
yeah, yeah. But from this perspective here, this is simply, he doesn't want 30 years later to somebody want to build a house there and say, wait a minute, we got these bones in the way, and start, you know what I mean? No, we have to, the way you protect against that is to make sure you're the owner of it, so no one can come in and do that, so, okay. Yes, go ahead. Yeah,
Oh, he answered my question.
oh, okay.
That was my question. How
Alright.
was the land originally acquired? Who
Oh,
owned it originally?
Oh, yeah.
Where's
Well,
the
when
deed?
God-
Where's the title? I mean, how did they own this land?
so, one other thing, all the land is there after the flood, right? And there's 8 people.
Right.
So who owns the land? Well, God, I mean, so there's no one left to, so practically speaking, it's whoever comes and stakes their claim first, right? Like when you go somewhere and plant your flag in modern times, we've declared this is France, or we've declared this is Spain, or whatever. All over America that was happening, right? Why? Well, because they claimed it first. And then they could sell it in the Louisiana Purchase to some other, you know what I'm saying? So there's some of that that's going on there, but they didn't buy that from someone else. I think they just kind of took first claim to it. Now, maybe they took it from some other nation, but anyway, Frida, go ahead.
I think there's a correlation in Abraham's life earlier on when he rescued Lot
Yes,
and the king of Sodom offered him all the booty that they took. And he said, I've solemnly promised Jehovah, the supreme God, creator of heaven and earth, that I will not take so much as a single thread from you, lest you say, Abraham's rich because of what I gave him.
Right.
And I think Abraham's integrity is
That's
he
good.
wants to please God, and he doesn't want to take anything so that people will say, well, I gave it to them so I can take it back.
yes,
And
yeah,
I think that's
yeah.
the same thing here.
I think you're right.
He's saying, you know,
Yep,
I want to have a stake in this
Yeah.
land.
I would say this, I think that and what I'm saying are very aligned, and you're saying like what I'm saying differently, and I'm glad you did, because it brings another element to it, but it's the same concept, same kind of thinking, so thank you for that. Go ahead.
I was wondering how large this piece of land was.
It's not real big. I mean, I don't know, acre, 2
So it'd
acres
be enough
maybe.
to, they're planning at least 4 or 3 more bodies? to be
There will
buried?
be more buried there, but when we look at the piece of land, is this the one? The cave of the field of, however you say that, east of Mamre, the land of Canaan, the field and the cave that is in it, where it was made over. So there's this field there. We don't know the size of the field. I don't think it's like some, 100 acre, 100 square miles thing. It's relatively small. There's a field there, and there's a cave at the end of the field, and that section kind of, that's what he got. He doesn't need a huge area, but he's
So he's
buying.
planning at least for like his dad and then
Well,
himself and his wife?
Him and his wife is probably the only 2 he has in mind immediately, because there's no other relatives. Like his dad has been gone for 100 years or something.
Oh, he's already.
Yeah, he died in Haran, if my memory is serving correctly, a long time ago, almost 100 years prior to this point in the story.
So he's buried somewhere else.
It's totally different. So this is Abraham and his wife are going to be buried there. Now later, we'll see others buried there, and I don't remember all who they are. But I don't think he's intending this to be the national cemetery of Israel, but it is meant really for him and his wife. And then others may say, hey, we want to be buried with them as
What do
well.
they exchange deeds or how do they?
This is the thing here. This is done in view of all the merchants. Let's see. Yeah, verse 18 here. Abraham, as it was made over to Abraham as a possession in the presence of the Hittites before all who went in at the gate of the city. So they didn't really have like deeds at the time, but there's 50 people standing around. They're dominant in the city, and they're witnesses to this transaction. So later, somebody says, well, that never happened. There's 50 witnesses to say, yes, it did, and he is the rightful owner. And then that gets passed on, and so that's how they know going forward.
Chris, is it typical in that region, we're not in a area, that it's caves is most of the burial
I don't know.
places, do you think, or?
Don't know.
Okay.
This next section, go ahead, what?
You can go, it's in Hebron, there's a temple there, it's
Yeah.
called the Tomb of the Patriarchs, so, now there's a temple over it,
Yeah.
like there is everything.
Of course, yeah.
Basically, but, it is still a place, and
Right.
it's.
You can actually go to this.
Yeah.
It's not like the Klingons where you
No.
can't actually get
It's
there.
like-
It is an actual, real, physical location, yeah. That is something about the whole Star Wars and all that stuff. It brings in some very similar sounding names. The Hittites and the Klingons, they sound like they ought to be in the same verse. I don't know, that's just kind of bizarre the way that gets muddied. And it just makes this stuff sound like it's folklore, and it isn't. It's not folklore. This is very real. This is actual places and people and real history.
I guess why I asked that, I know they did a lot of sacrifices too.
Mhm. Yeah.
Maybe
gonna-
it just made it like, this is different, like
Oh,
separated.
I gotcha.
Being in a cave, I don't know.
So I did do some research on cremation burial, and I'm going to get into it a little bit later this morning, but I can tell you this, they think it started in about 3000 AD is when they may have started doing that, which is about 1,000 years after, I think. No. This was 2000, it should be 1,000, yeah, sorry, not AD. Oh my goodness, yeah.
Now we're talking Klingons.
Yes, now we're talking 3000 BC. Thank you all for catching that. 3000 BC, and I think if I'm remembering correctly, isn't Abraham at about 2000 BC? Yeah, so about 1,000 years prior to this, they had started doing some cremation. So, I know it's interesting stuff. We'll talk about that later. Hopefully, if we'll get that far. All right, I got 7 screens of scripture, and we're just going to read through it because it's a story, and we just need to get it all done. So, somebody who's willing, loud enough that it can be picked up by the microphone. If you'll just read through these.
Now, bear with me, sorry, my
That's fine.
allergies are dumb. Now, Abraham was old, well advanced in years, and the Lord had blessed Abraham in all things. And Abraham said to his servant, the oldest of his household, who had charge of all that he had, put your hand under my thigh, that I may make you swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and God of earth, that you will not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I dwell, but will go to my country and to my kindred, and take a wife for my son Isaac. The servant said to him, perhaps the woman may not be willing to follow me to this land. Must I then take your son back to the land from which you came? Abraham said to him, see to it that you do not take my son back there.
Okay. So this is simply his charge to his servant Eliezer. We talked about that last time. Go and get this daughter for my son, not just from my homeland, but really from my father's household. I think it says in there. Anyway, it says that at one of these. So Go ahead, next screen.
The Lord, the God of heaven, who took me from my father's house and from the land of my kindred, and who spoke to me and swore to me, to your offspring I will give this land. He will send his angel before you, and you shall take a wife for my son from there. But if the woman is not willing to follow you, then you will be free from this oath of mine. Only you must not take my son back there. So the servant put his hand under the thigh of Abraham, his master, and swore to him concerning this matter. Then the servant took 10 of his master's camels and departed, taking all sorts of choice gifts from his master. And he arose and went to Mesopotamia, to the city of Nahor. And he made the camels kneel down outside the city by the well of water at the time of evening, the time when women would go out to draw water.
Okay, so we learned last time that camels drink about 50 gallons, and there's 10 camels, so 500 gallons. Just have that in mind, okay? Drawing pictures a gallon or two at a time. Capture that. Now let's keep reading.
And he said, O Lord, God of my master Abraham, please grant me success today and show steadfast love to my master Abraham. Behold, I am standing by the spring of water, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming out to draw water. Let the young woman to whom I shall say, please let down your jar that I may drink, and who shall say, drink, and I will water your camels. Let her be the one whom you have appointed for your servant Isaac. By this I shall know that you have shown steadfast love to my master. Before he had finished speaking, behold, Rebekah, who was born to Bethuel and son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, came out with her water jar on her shoulder. The young woman was very attractive in appearance, a maiden whom no man had known. She went down to the spring and filled her jar and came up.
So again, can I have a drink? And someone says, oh sure, here's a drink, right? Easy ask. What he's waiting for is something that no one would ever say, right? Let me voluntarily draw 500 gallons of water for you, stranger. That's not gonna happen. Do you understand what I'm saying? So he's asking the Lord for something that is kind of like never going to happen. That's a good fleece to put out. If this happens, this isn't coincidental, this isn't accidental, this has to be something of the Lord, because this would never occur. We've talked about this a bunch of times. I just thought it's good to point it out. In verse 16, a maiden whom no man had known. Again, the word known is relational, not knowledge, it's not informational. We see that all through the scriptures. And so when we see God knows us, or we know God, or more importantly, he knows us, we see that in other places it's relational, right? And that's how the Bible often uses this. So that's just one that I had not noticed before, and I thought, ooh, there's another one. Once you see these, you just see them everywhere, I guess is what I'm saying.
So Isaac and Rebecca are basically first cousins,
Yeah.
right? Am I reading
Trying to
that
think
right?
that,
Second.
is it second cousins? Yeah.
No.
Yeah, because it's,
Abraham and Nahor are brothers.
yes, but
So aren't they first cousins?
But Bethuel's his son.
yeah, that it
Oh,
gets
okay,
confusing,
gotcha. Yeah.
So
yeah.
Nahor's son,
They're still
and
cousins.
yes, but they are second cousins. We went through that last week. It's like if my son married yeah, you'll figure it out. It's just too hard. But yes, it's a second cousin. So it'd be if I married my brother's granddaughter or something.
Yeah.
It's one extra generation removed, not just a cousin.
Chris, I
Go ahead.
I think of Rebecca, she's like a mail order bride, that goes clear across the country and marries somebody she doesn't know.
Right.
So what did God instill in her, just like in Mary and in Joseph,
Yeah.
that they rose above? They were not rich people, they were ordinary, caring, very giving people, that they would go and overcome such great odds to do the job that God
We called them to do.
called them to do.
So, I think there is something noble in her willing to do that, but I would add maybe two things that kind of lessen that slightly. One, clearly she's being courted by an incredibly wealthy person. That makes it a little better. And then second, arranged marriages are how it works. She's not like gonna marry the guy she loves. She's gonna marry whoever her dad or whoever picks for her anyway. So,
But willing to do it.
yeah, but it is a big ask. You're going to somewhere where you've never been, you don't know anybody, and you're gonna marry this guy, and he could be,
She knew who he was, right?
No, I mean, she knows the family, but
I guess.
she's never met her uncle or great uncle, whichever it would have been, Abraham. I mean, he's been gone for 100 years. She's only in her, 30s or 40s or whatever. Isaac's never been there. She's never been there. So they've never met anybody. This is just, we had this uncle or great uncle, and he took off 100 years ago, and we don't know whatever happened to him, kind of a thing. He just up and left with dad, and then dad, we don't know what happened to him either, and here comes this guy saying, hey, we made it to the other side of the world, So think about it as 1600s England, and 50, 75 years later, the long lost guy that went off to America to make his fortune comes back. Oh, so you did survive. Here we figured you've been dead for a long time. You know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. So anyway, all right, let's keep moving. Did I switch screens already, I think? No? Okay. All right.
Then the servant ran to meet her and said, please give me a little water to drink from your jar. She said, drink, my lord. And she quickly let down her jar upon her hand and gave him a drink. When she had finished giving him a drink, she said, I will draw water for your camels also, until they have finished drinking. So she quickly emptied her jar into the trough and ran again to the well to draw water, and she drew for all his camels. The man gazed at her in silence to learn whether the Lord had prospered his journey or not. When the camels had finished drinking, the man took a gold ring weighing a half shekel and 2 bracelets for her arms weighing 10 gold shekels, and said, please, tell me whose daughter you are. Is there room in your father's house for us to spend the night?
So again, he's not looking for people of that country. He's looking for someone of Nahor's household, because he wants a son, or wants a wife for his son from his brother's household, right? So again, the servant is from America, in my analogy a few minutes ago, and Abraham's from Liverpool. Go back to Liverpool, find my brother, his family, and get somebody. And he shows up at the town square of Liverpool with his camels. Do you get this bizarre nature of this story? And it just so happens that his niece shows up out of all the people.
With God, right?
Yeah, it's just bizarre. I mean, okay, this is almost more miraculous than people giving birth at 90 years old. It's not, because it's not a miracle. We'll talk about that in a minute. It's providence, but go ahead.
I noticed it said the man gazed at her in silence to learn whether the Lord had prospered his journey or not. He was still questioning it?
Yeah, I know.
After she had said, I will water your camels?
Wow, this girl's really nice. I hope she's a niece. If not, what are the odds I'm going to get another person to say that, So I think that's maybe it. If she had said, yeah, my father's name's Zacchaeus, well, I'm sorry, you're not the one I'm looking for, because he needs to find someone of Nahor's household.
Or if she's gonna finish the job, if she quit the job halfway through and said, what, my back's hurting me,
Yeah.
or said, okay.
You know what, I forgot, I need to go wash my hair. All right.
That's a valid statement, because even nowadays, some of us still question after God
Sure.
gives us a direct answer.
Yeah.
We're-
That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah. All right.
She said to him, I am the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, whom she bore to Nahor. She added, we have plenty of both straw and fodder, and room to spend the night. The man bowed his head and worshipped the Lord. he said, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who has not forsaken his steadfast love and his faithfulness toward my master. As for me, the Lord has led me in the way to the house of my master's kinsman." Then the young woman ran and told her mother's household about these things. Rebekah had a brother whose name was Laban. Laban ran out toward the man to the spring. As soon as he saw the ring and the bracelets on his sister's arms, and heard the words of Rebekah his sister, "Thus the man spoke to me," he went to the man. And behold, he was standing by the camels at the spring.
So we'll learn more about Laban later, but this is like completely a Laban move, if I would say. Oh, look at those bracelets. Where's this guy at? And he takes off running to find him, right? This is the guy who later makes a deal with Jacob that if you work for me for 7 years, you can marry Rachel. And he does. That's a long time to work. And then he finally gets to marry Rachel. And on the wedding night, he pulls a fast one and switches out Rachel for Leah, because no one wanted to marry Leah. Apparently she was very unattractive. And but she was the older, and it's not right that the younger marry before the older. And there was veils involved and all kinds of things. So he was able to pull this fast one over on Jacob. So the next morning, Jacob realizes what's happened and goes to Laban, and Laban says, like, well, if you work for me another 7 years, you can get Rachel. You can go ahead and marry her now, but you owe me 7 more years. Just what a complete dirtbag of a person. And then there's stories of the sheep. Jacob's sheep are getting too numerous, so he starts doing things to try to cheat Jacob out of his sheep, and then that doesn't work. And the Lord just keeps prospering Jacob, and Laban just keeps getting more and more angry. And it ends badly, and he escapes from Laban. And so we'll learn a lot about Laban in time, but which I guess I just gave away. I think we're going to finish Genesis at some point. But this is, yes. But the point is, this is our first meeting of Laban. I think it's interesting that this is how his story starts. It just sets the stage. Here he is. You're going to get to hear a lot of this same kind of behavior out of this guy. Anyway, all right. Go ahead.
He said, "Come in, O blessed of the Lord. Why do you stand outside? For I prepared the house and a place for the camels." So the man came to the house and unharnessed the camels and gave straw and fodder to the camels, and there was water to wash his feet and the feet of the men who were with him. Then food was set before him to eat, but he said, "I will not eat until I have said what I have to say." He said, "Speak on." So he said, "I am Abraham's servant. The Lord has greatly blessed my master, and he has become great. He has given him flocks and herds, silver and gold, male servants and female servants, camels and donkeys. And Sarah, my master's wife, bore a son to my master when she was old, and to him he has given all that he has had,
So, it's just, you remember Leave It to Beaver, the show, right? And Eddie Haskell. Okay, he was this snarky, syrupy, always pulling a fast one. I hear this first line in the voice of Eddie Haskell. "Come in, oh blessed of the Lord." Why do you stand outside? He's Haskelling. That's a verb in our house. Are you Haskelling me? Don't be doing that. So that's, to me, is what this is. I don't think he thinks he's blessed of the Lord. I think he is just laying it on thick because there's a lot of money involved here. So I think that's what's going on there. He did not, by the way, have time to prepare the house and a place for the camels. As soon as he saw the gold, he took off running. That's all fluff. So, anyway. Go ahead.
My master made me swear, saying, "You shall not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, in whose land I dwell, but you shall go to my father's house and to my clan and take a wife for my son." I said to my master, "Perhaps the woman will not follow me." But he said to me, "The Lord, before whom I have walked, will send his angel with you and prosper your way. You shall take a wife for my son, from my clan, and from my father's house. Then you will be free from my oath when you come to my clan. And if they will not give her to you, you will be free from my oath.
So this is where we get the really specific. It has to be of his father's house. It cannot be from his city. It can't be from, I mean, it's gotta be a descendant of his father's household. So that's he shows up at the town square in, some town across the world, and he's looking for a nephew or a niece, which is just pretty remarkable. I talked about this last time. You shall not take a daughter from the Canaanites. And I asked the question, why is that such a big deal? And we talked about in the time of Abraham living in the land, there were the Nephilim. Nephilim is singular. Rephaim is the plural version of Nephilim. So this is talking about when these 4 kings come in and they defeat these nations who are nations that aren't maybe 100% Nephilim, but they have Nephilim in the nations. So Canaan has already got a Nephilim problem, even in this day. And then later when the Israelites come out of Egypt and they go in, this is the spies are terrified because there's giants in the land and we're like grasshoppers and all that. Why? Because the land is now filled with Nephilim. Not, again, 100%, right? And it goes on after that. Goliath, we think he had 4 brothers that were the same size. They had 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, according to the scriptures. So there's a Nephilim issue going on all through this. The point of that is the Messiah has to be a descendant of Adam. So if you have Nephilim in the genealogy, it sort of messes that up. He needs to be the second Adam. So why is he sending off to get of his father's household? Because he knows the bloodline has not been messed up. That's part of it. I think that's part of it. You can disagree with me if you'd like. I think that's a part of this. It is also because they are a wicked and idolatrous people. That's true. Later, is it Rachel? Is that who's? I keep getting Rachel and Rebecca mixed up. It's Rachel we're dealing with this morning, right? No, it's Rebecca. Sorry, I got them backwards. Rebecca, later, when they want to get a son for their son, they get a wife for their son, Jacob, she's like, these Hittite women are driving me crazy, and she doesn't want her son to marry anybody in Canaan. And again, go see my brother Laban and find a wife. It's the exact same thing. So
But
part
the
of this
brother
is,
marries.
right?
The brother marries the twins.
Yes, then
Jacob
and then her
Esau.
brother marries.
Esau
Yes.
marries.
Yes,
the other.
Esau marries a local girl. One of the wicked and idolatrous people. That's the people in Canaan. They were descendants of Canaan, the one that was cursed by Noah. That would be another reason he doesn't want Isaac. He doesn't want Isaac to marry somebody locally. And then the last one is that there was Rephaim, or again, singular speaking, Nephilim, living among the Canaanites, and he wanted his son to remain free from that corruption. We went through this during Genesis 6, just prior to the flood. I know we spent several weeks kind of unpacking that whole situation, and I think it's actually a fairly important part of the scriptural narrative, but it is so bizarre we just don't talk about it because we're weird enough as it is. I was actually listening to a message recently by MacArthur on why does the world reject God's word? And I've talked about this before. It's the first time I've heard somebody else talk about it though. What we believe is weird. It is, it's fine, we can acknowledge that. The Bible says it's foolishness to the wise. Meaning it's so, and the way he explained it was, okay, you are first century Christians and your job is to sell the idea that the God of the universe became a human being that was so poor he was born in a stable and lived in some obscure town, and when he grew up his own countrymen rejected him and then the Romans crucified him. and that's the God of the universe, and you should give your life to him. That's the story they're pitching. No, you know what I mean? What the message we have is foolishness, except for the fact that it's true. And therefore, the only people who will believe it are those who God has opened their eyes to the truth. So we don't ever need to try to make the story better or more manageable or leave out the hard parts. No. It's an unbelievable story. Just give it to people the way God gave it to us, tell the truth, and let him work on the mind of the person so that they'll believe it. Go ahead.
Chris, that's why I appreciate your teaching. I'm
Yep.
not kidding,
Yep.
because I wrote about Sarah for
Mhm.
Guidepost
Yep.
books, and I wrote what was
In the text.
the text, and I was told by my editors, we can't print that because it's different than what they've learned in Sunday school. And I said, oh no, we will print that because that's what's in the Bible.
Right.
And they said, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Uh,
Stand your ground and
Yeah, and I feel like we do a disservice. It's not just the world who thinks
yeah.
the Bible's weird.
Yeah.
It's we in our churches who have gotten away from the really deep study of what the Bible really, not just what it says that we can just skim over
Right.
and not understand,
Right.
but really dig deep and be interested that Rephaim is the plural of Nephilim.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, who
Yeah.
cares? Well, we better care because
Right.
it's an important part of
Yeah.
that understanding for the whole concept
Yeah,
of
this-
the New Testament.
Zemzuim and Emim, by the way, why are they highlighted? Because we're told in other passages that's what some nations called the Rephaim or the Nephilim.
But see,
Those are different words of the same thing.
I skip over those words
Yeah.
because they're hard to pronounce and I don't care what they mean, but they mean something.
Yeah, there's
So,
a deeper meaning there,
we gotta
yeah.
have a geek teacher tell us those things.
Thank you.
So I love that. I love that.
Where's my pocket protector? No, I'm with you.
Yeah.
There's so many things as we go through that we're like, how in the world did I not know that? That seems like that's important, you know? Yeah. And it is. I think we're afraid of being the oddballs, and it's like, embrace that. Part of it, I say that because when you live in a Christian culture, and what do I mean by that? I don't mean the people are Christians. I mean the people that are not Christians have Christian worldviews and don't know it. Okay? It's just the air they breathe. That's the world they live in. We don't live in that world. Our parents did, and some of us may have got to live some of our life in that, but that's not the world we live in. We're way past post-Christian. So the point of that is we are the oddballs. Anyway, we're now going to be treated like the oddballs. And if we don't embrace that, we will start saying, well, now, if you deny me before men, right? Fill in the rest of that sentence. He will deny you before the Father. That's just, and again, people that go to the stake to get burnt don't start there. They have a whole bunch of things that lead them up to the fact that they're willing to do that. I don't think we're going to get burned at the stake next week. They'll do something different, probably guillotines. But the point is, it's not going to be next week. But it could be a few years down the road. So don't, that's the marathon is my point. Start on your 5K now. Get ready for that by being the oddball a little, and then a little more and a little more. And you've built up that ability to say, yep, I believe that. And be the weird one at the table at dinner. So I really want to encourage that. I know I keep harping on it, but I think it's important. What's the difference between a miracle and the providence of God? A miracle is an impossible event that can only happen with God's special intervention. Water, wine, walking on water, right? dead people coming to life. Those are not coincidental, those are miracles. Providence of God is when things seem to be coincidentally working toward a specific outcome. So we deal in the world of providence all the time, and we deal in the world of miracles never. You might see it once in your life, twice in your life, 3 times in your life. It's going to be incredibly rare. I don't even know if I may have been my whole life and not seen that, firsthand. My point is, they're rare, or they wouldn't be miracles. It's like, but providence, that's pretty common. You'll see that a lot. And so I want to try to get us to bring the word providence back into a proper usage because it's important. Is the interaction between Eliezer and Rebekah a miracle or providence? And I answered the question last time. It is providence. So let's read these 2 screens quickly together and then we'll jump through the rest of our stuff.
I came today to the spring and said, O Lord, the God of my master Abraham, if now you are prospering the way that I go, behold, I am standing by the spring of water. Let the virgin who comes out to draw water, to whom I shall say, please give me a little water from your jar to drink. And who will say to me, drink, and I will draw for your camels also. Let her be the woman whom the Lord has appointed for my master's son. Before I had finished speaking in my heart, behold, Rebekah came out with her water jar on her shoulder. She went down to the spring and drew water. I said to her, please let me drink. She quickly let down her jar from her shoulder and said, drink, and I will also give your camels drink also. So I drank, and she gave the camels drink also. Then I asked her, whose daughter are you? She said, the daughter of Bethuel, Nahor's son, whom Milcah bore to him. So I put the ring on her nose and the bracelets on her arms. Then I bowed her head and worshipped the Lord and blessed the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, whom had led me by the right way to take the daughter of my master's kinsman for a son. Now then, if you are going to show steadfast love and faithfulness to my master, tell me. If not, tell me, that I may turn to the right hand or to the left. Then Laban and Bethuel answered and said, the thing has come from the Lord. We cannot speak to you bad or good. Behold, Rebekah is before you. Take her and go, and let her be the wife of your master's son, as the Lord has spoken.
So the reason I've added that at this point, clearly this is not miraculous. This is providential. This is an amazing series of events, but there's nothing, molecularly changing or, the laws of nature defying happening here. This is just providence. But providence is an incredible thing.
I'm curious about the nose thing. I'm like trying to find it.
Oh, the nose ring?
Yeah.
I think it's
I'm like, how did I not notice that before? I used to.
Yeah, cultural, yeah. For some odd reason, it's coming back. I don't know. I don't get that,
I'm
but
like, was it just like a loop or was it actual like a nose piercing?
I would think, I don't know.
Okay.
We're not given anything. It's just, and it's not a light thing. I mean, it's half a shekel, but I don't know what a shekel is, but I don't think it's like a gram or something. It's fairly significant, so.
It's significantly painful, let me tell you.
Yeah. They didn't have needles back then. They had, I don't know, it's not that big, but you know what I'm saying. I don't know. I don't know how this thing works.
Okay.
Kind of strange. So when Abraham's servant heard these words, he bowed himself to the earth before the Lord, and the servant brought out jewelry and silver and gold and garments and gave them to Rebekah. He also gave them to her brother and her mother costly ornaments, and he and his men who were with him ate and drank, and they spent the night there. When they arose in the morning, he said, send me away to my master. Her brother and her mother said, let the young woman remain with us a while, at least 10 days. After that she may go. So they're all about, that's fine, she can go, but I mean, you literally just got here and we just figured out we're losing her, so can we not have a few days, is really what's happening there, right? But he said to them, "Do not delay me, since the Lord has prospered my way. Send me away that I may go to my master." They said, "Let us call the young woman and ask her." And they called Rebekah, and she said, "Will you go with this man?" And she said, "I will go." So they sent away Rebekah, their sister, and her nurse, and Abraham's servant and his men. And they blessed Rebekah and said to her, "Our sister, may you become thousands of 10,000s, and may your offspring prosper at the gate of those, or possess the gate of those who hate him." It's an interesting blessing. May you become thousands of 10,000s, that you may multiply like the sand of the sea. Is kind of what that's another way of expressing. May your offspring take the gates of those who hate him. So this is those who hate the descendants of hers, or those that hate Israel, and may Israel take the gates, or the city states, conquer those that hate them. Is that not amazing? Especially in light of what's happening in the world today. I don't know if you guys heard this yesterday. We should be adding this to our prayer list. There are still hostages being held by Hamas. 4 were rescued yesterday, alive.
One soldier.
One of the soldiers was killed in the process. Here's an important thing to note. The 4 hostages were held in homes of innocent civilians. Wonder how many innocent civilians are not innocent civilians in Gaza that are actually holding the hostages for Hamas. In the neighborhood of one of the leading Hamas terrorists, to make sure that he doesn't get hit by using the hostages as this human shield, and the innocent civilians that are holding them captive.
And they keep blaming Israel when
So-
innocent,
I'm just saying, if you're getting news from a source that makes it sound like Israel's the bad guy in this whole thing, to me, that's it. I'm never listening to you again. You've discredited yourself. I don't care anything you say about anything at this point. If you're getting that one wrong, you're done. So I keep saying, make sure you're finding good sources of news. That's a great way to figure that out. If you're getting news, and I don't care if it's Fox or PBS or whoever, I don't care. If they're getting this wrong, shut them off. Don't listen anymore. That's my thing. You do what you want. But anyway, all right.
I just wonder how Israel knew where
Where they were.
people are.
Took a month. No, it took a month. The thing has been planning for months. I mean, like at least.
Well, they have to have spies.
Yeah, they're good at that, but they've been waiting for just the right moment for quite a while. The approval for it was given like on Thursday, and they just kept waiting for the moment.
Well, that's why Israel keeps looking like the bad guys, because these civilians are portraying to be civilians, and they're really not.
They're not. What's funny is Hamas came out and said, actually, we weren't holding them. It was the civilians that were holding them. Oh, okay. Well, we didn't even kidnap them. The civilians kidnapped them. Oh, so I think that's what we've been saying, and now you're admitting that's true. I don't understand why you would do that. You're throwing your innocent civilians under the bus. That's weird.
My dad served in the Gulf War, and the stories that he showed me the pictures, like
Yeah.
they were, the children were the ones that were,
Yeah.
you know.
Let's get back on track. Sorry. All right. I wasn't saying that to you. I was saying that to me. So then Rebekah and her young woman, actually, I'm going to have you go ahead and read these two.
Then Rebekah and her young women arose and rode on the camels and followed the man. Thus the servant took Rebekah and went his way. Now Isaac had returned from Beer-lahai-roi and was dwelling in the Negev. And Isaac went out to meditate in the field toward evening. And he lifted up his eyes and saw, and behold, there were camels coming. And Rebekah lifted up her eyes, and when she saw Isaac, she dismounted from the camel and said to the servant, "Who is that man walking in the field to meet us?" The servant said, "It is my master." So she took her veil and covered herself. And the servant told Isaac all the things that he had done. Then Isaac brought her into the tent of Sarah, his mother, and took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. So Isaac was comforted after his mother's death.
And I was kind of looking at some other stuff. Did it say here that he was married at 40? Is that where this is? Okay. There it is. This is the next set of verses. These are the generations of Isaac. Oh, it's later, I guess, is when it shows up. These are the generations of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham fathered Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah. So his mom died at 37, and 3 years later, 3 to 4, he marries her. So what we know is it's a long journey up and around and back to the homeland and then back to here. So I don't know if that's a year or two or what. We don't really know the time frame, but it's a long time. He's still mourning the loss of his mom. So it isn't, I don't know. I just thought that was interesting to add that in. Yeah, okay, we already looked at that one.
Abraham took another wife, whose name was Keturah. She bore him Zimran, Jokshan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. Jokshan fathered Sheba and...
Hold up for a second, just because of the time, let me do this.
Yeah, that's a lot of names.
It's a lot of names, and we don't really need to know their names that much. So he took another wife. I want you to notice here, it's not as though, in our culture, a husband and wife, he dies or she dies, and then he remarries. His next wife is the same as the first wife, right? It's his wife. This, we're told in another passage, the sons of this same lady, Abraham's concubine. It's when it says another, it's really referring to like a second tier wife. It's not like she died so he went and remarried. It's not that. And we're told that in several places that she's a concubine. So I just want you to understand that's when you see here another wife and you're reading later and it says she's a concubine. Wait a minute, is that a contradiction? No, it's not a contradiction. The concubine is like a second tier of wife, so to speak. So I want you to see this. She bore these 5 sons. Then it gives you the sons of that one of those. So these are grandsons. And then it lists another one. I hit the wrong button. Sorry. Dedan, that's the grandson, right? Then it lists the great grandson. The sons of Dedan are, and then so it's actually not giving you like all the kids. It's giving you 5 kids. One of them did these 2. One of those gave you these 4. So it's like layering down through the generations. The reason being, I think, is those will be significant in the story later, and so we're getting their lineage here. Same thing going on there. Midian has these different sons. But Abraham gave all that he had to Isaac, but to the son of the concubines, Abraham gave gifts. So there are several apparently. In the end, Abraham ends up with these 5 sons plus Isaac plus Ishmael. So 7 sons in all, which is interesting. These are the days and the years of the life of Abraham. He's 175 years old. He breathes his last and died in a good old age. The old man was full of years, and he was gathered to his people. I'm going to go through a couple things. We talked about the burial thing last time. This is Moses being buried by God. I was using that just kind of as a way of illustrating this idea that I think burial is a Christian thing. I'm going to show you a little bit more here, and then we have to wrap up. I've got a handout that I made. I had us make copies. Let me show it to you. Looks like that. I got 10 of them. There should be one per couple if you're interested. It's an article by John Piper. So I just thought, yay, somebody that's smart who thinks the way I do. It's always encouraging. Let me show you a couple of things though first. following the Grecian trend, it's talked about this 3000 BC thing, and then it came up to this point in this article I was reading, not this one I'm giving you, but another one I was reading. The early Romans probably embraced cremation for some time around 600 BC, so before Christ, and it apparently became so prevalent that an official decree had to be issued in the 5th century against the cremation of bodies within the city. It had become so widespread that they eventually said, no, we're not going to do that. By the time of the Roman Empire, and this is 27 BC, right? What's happening around 27 BC? The death and resurrection of Christ would have happened at that similar time frame. To 395 AD, it was widely practiced, and the cremated remains were generally stored in elaborate urns, often within Columbine-like buildings. What is this time frame? This time frame is before Christianity had really taken hold in the Roman Empire. This is when they're largely pagan, cremation is dominant. As they shift to a Christian-dominated culture in Rome, this ends. Although the practice was prevalent among the Romans, cremation was rare with the early Christians who considered it pagan. And in the Jewish culture were traditional sepulchres. Sepulchres is the tomb burial. Was preferred. However, from 400 AD, as a result of Constantine's Christianization of the empire, earthly burial had completely replaced cremation, except for rare instances of plague or war, and for the next 1500 years remained the accepted mode of disposition throughout Europe. Why? Because it's been Christianized. So as paganism goes away and Christianity rises, cremation goes away and we're replaced with burial. Now, where are we at in the West? We're no longer Christian, and we're now at about 75% cremation. These things go together, but they're subconsciously going together. I'm out of time. I really would encourage you to read this article. It's really, really good. I do want to talk about one thing, a common objective. Well, if people die in a fire and are raised, why shouldn't I be cremated? I mean, God can resurrect people if they've been burned up. Of course we do that, of course. Moses was buried. He's dirt, gone. I mean, there's nothing left. If he had been cremated or buried today, it'd look the same, right? That has nothing to do with it. The burial is a symbolic act, and that's the point he's making in this. It's symbolism. And let me see if I can find it quickly. 1 Corinthians 15, talking about, and you've heard these read at funerals. What we sow is not the body that is to be, but a bare kernel, perhaps of wheat or some other form of grain. So it is with the resurrection of the dead. What is sown is perishable. What is raised is imperishable. It is sown in dishonor, it is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness, it is raised in power. It is sown a natural body, it is raised a spiritual body. The point he's getting at is there's a symbolism of reaping and sowing. We are burying the body in anticipation of resurrection. The other thing is, at the Christian worldview, when we talk about that's just the shell, that's not a Christian worldview. We talk about that body, it doesn't matter, it's just do whatever with it, it doesn't matter, it's not really them, they're in heaven. No, that is them. We are made of three components, a soul, a spirit, and a body, and I have all three, and I will always have all three. I will have a different body when I get to heaven. It'll be an imperishable body, but I'm never going to be this disembodied ghost. God has never, he made a body, and then he breathed the spirit into Adam. There's not a time when humans have been disembodied. The secular, the pagan view is that the body is an evil thing. It's corrupt. We gotta release the spirit from the body, so we're gonna burn the body away. In all the countries of things like where there's Hinduism and Buddhism and all of that, it's incredibly common to do cremation. And everywhere that's a dominant in Christianity, it's very common to do burial. So we can talk about it more. I did have a hand back here. Did you have one, bud?
Yeah, so if you're cremated and buried, how's that work?
I think the symbolism is bad. But again, by the way, if you have family members that are being cremated, I don't dislike you, okay? If you have already prepaid for your cremation, you're not my enemy or anything. I don't think this is that kind of a deal. But I think we have done, it's like so many things. It's like what you were talking about earlier about, we learned in Sunday school this. How many of you call it Easter instead of Resurrection Sunday? Right? Does that make you bad? No. Right? Do you put little things of bunnies around at Easter? Yeah. Why? Why? What's that have to do with the resurrection? Well, nothing. Right? So there's so much of this stuff that's just seeped in subtly, and I'm saying I want to try to recapture some of the things that are Christian and get away from some of the things that we've let paganism seep into our own thinking unknowingly. So I'm going to pray, and then I'll hang out and talk, because I'm sure there's stuff we'd like to talk about. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the morning. Thank you for helping us see the life of Abraham for all that it is and all the lessons that we can learn from it. It's an incredible thing. Help us in the weeks to come as we're going through James and these other books. Help that to be impactful to our lives as well. And we pray that you'd bring us back together safely, that we continue to love each other and then love those around us and help them to see the truth of the gospel. Just pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.